Well, the point is here, the airlines will still be required to file the same aircraft and flight data for each airport under SB 661. The only difference is that the airlines are going to be sending the data to the BOE and not sending them to the affected counties. So separating the assessment responsibilities will also result in more reporting errors and misclassifications. And classifications issues arise as to what is personal property and what are fixtures. Frequently arise in these assessments. Under this bill, there's no clear way for the local assessor to discover the misclassifications. The assessor must depend on the BOE to notify the assessor of any items which should have been reported as fixtures. And further, there's no legal right to the assessor to appeal any misclassifications. And such errors and misclassifications, unless corrected, will lead to double assessments or escaped assessments. Also, accurate appraisal of commercial aircraft is complex. It requires specialized knowledge and years of experience. The BOE lacks the expertise to properly assess aircraft. The BOE, it will take the BOE staff several years to acquire such skills. And finally, for many years, the airline industry—
Hire some of your people.
Pardon me?
So they could just hire some of your people. You're overburdened anyway.
I don't know that they can afford to hire. That's the problem. It will be more costly for them to do that. Finally, for many years, the airline industry has benefited from special treatment under the law for commercial aircraft. As a result of 9/11, major tax relief was granted to the industry with the unique valuation methodology of wholesale less than %. The circumstances that justify that methodology no longer exist. The airline industry has made a strong economic recovery. Currently, the only personal property in the state that receives preferential treatment is the aircraft of commercial airline industry. SB 661 will continue that inequity. In closing, there's a lot of value at risk. For 2014, the airlines allocated aircraft value statewide at $7.85 billion. Cities, schools, community colleges, and counties, which all depend on property tax revenue, cannot afford costly misclassifications and escaped assessments. And for all of these reasons, I respectfully request your no vote on SB 661. I also have with me Bob Inez from my office and Neil Najjar from the Los Angeles County Assessor's Office to assist in answering any technical questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, nice to see you after all these years. I'm here today in my capacity as a Santa Clara County Assessor in strong opposition to SB 661. This legislation has nothing to do with increased government efficiency or making it easier for airlines to comply. Instead, it is an attempt by the airline industry to get a significant and unfair tax break not offered to any other businesses in California. The current system has worked for 10 years, and it's worked well. The airlines can file one property statement for all of their aircraft in a single county. They omitted saying that to you earlier. The airlines have chosen not to take that option, but it's available to them. That was the deal that was agreed to 10 years ago. And since then, not a single airline has raised a complaint with the State Board of Equalization or with assessors, despite the fact that assessors and the airlines meet together twice a year. Not a single complaint has been sent in 10 years. Currently, the value of a larger, more fuel-efficient and modern fleet of commercial aircraft is assessed at 20% below 2005 levels and 10% below the values contained in the official airline price guide. For 10 years, there have been only 2 assessment appeals filed by the airlines, one each by United and American Airlines. That doesn't sound like a broken system to me. In 2013, a comprehensive audit by the State Board of Equalization praised Los Angeles County for the assessment of commercial aircraft. SB 661's objectives were clear: a very large tax break, How large? Between 33 and 57%, in addition to the wholesale less 10% formula that has been in place for 10 years. How do I know that? That's the amount of reduction that American and United requested when they filed those appeals in Los Angeles County. In both cases, the Independent Assessment Appeals Board not only flatly rejected their request, but wrote an opinion sharply criticizing American and United. The formula will not make any difference in the same results in terms of revenue as a false claim. Here's a brief excerpt from the Appeals Board decision, and I quote, "The applicant's position is a distortion of the appraisal process. The applicant's arguments in support of its application are not consistent, reliable, or credible. It should be noted that the applicant's second argument advances an absurd, quote, absurd conclusion." That's what the Assessment Appeals Board, praised by the State Board of Equalization, said in auditing in their assessment appeals. What's before you today would lead to an even larger tax break for an industry that last year reported the third straight year of record profits, up 224% just since 2012, driven by incredible passenger demand and lower fuel costs. And that statistic comes from the International Air Transport Association, from $6.1 billion to $12.9 billion in 4 years. If the airline industry has suggestions for improving the current system, assessors have repeatedly offered to meet and work with them to improve the current process. They have declined each time. I urge you to vote against SB 661 and force the airline industry to work with assessors on real solutions. In answer to your question, Mr. Chairman, the audit provision that is added to the bill increases inefficiency and significantly increases the cost. Since the BOE can't audit itself, the state would have to create a separate independent unit to audit the accuracy and compliance of BOE assessments of commercial airlines. The reason they can't hire the people that we have, there's not a single person in the BOE that has any experience in assessing or valuing commercial aircraft. So where would they get them? They would get them from the people in the counties now that are doing that job very well. The state pays 21 to 35% less for the same positions than we have in the counties. There's no expert in any county that's going to move to Sacramento to take a job for 21 to 35% less to do the same job in Sacramento that they're doing very well in the counties.
Thank you, sir. All I can tell you is, from everything that I learned and the folks that I talked to, irrespective of the airline industry, the personal property tax system takes so much money to administer. Airlines are different a little bit. You go into someone's office and tax their photocopy machine, and we raise so little money, and the cost is so high. I want to hold hearings as to whether it's even necessary to even continue to have personal property tax in the state of California, because I think it bears an analysis. I don't know the answer to it, but it bears an analysis. It doesn't really raise a lot of dough, and it sure creates a lot of heartache for folks. And in terms of the balance of other taxes and trying to restructure tax structure, that may be something we want to look at. So, you know, these arguments, I get the point that there's been this adjustment in the airline industry because of 911, but you know, I just don't think well, whatever, we'll get to that. Any further in opposition? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, members, Terry Brennan on behalf of the Service Employees International Union. In opposition, this is a solution in search of a problem. To our minds, I'd like to associate my opposition with the comments of Mr. Stone, our esteemed assessor from Santa Clara County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Dorothy Holzem with the California State Association of Counties. Sorry, slipped in on the table.
Oh, sorry.
Good morning. I would also like to align my comments with the previous speakers, and we do appreciate the author's attention to this issue given the pending sunset or upcoming sunset. But we also want to note some of the comments provided in the committee's great analysis. We really have a big question mark about how much money is going to be coming back to our critical local services that our counties provide. And given the success and the well-run nature of the program to date, we think it's a better solution to keep a current program in place or look at it at the specific issues rather than do a wholesale change and completely wipe out the current system and offer the new one. So for those reasons, we respectfully oppose SB 661.
Thank you.
Samantha Corbin on behalf of California Tax Reform Association. We also agree with all that's been said here by the opposition. In addition, and also to point out some points from the analysis, the legislature first imposed personal income tax. It created the Franchise Tax Board, but it sent appeals to the BOE, and that's an important check and balance not represented in this legislation. The BOE would be both responsible for administering and appealing the program, which, as of course the other opponents have said, they lack the expertise to do. In addition, I know a number of folks mentioned, proponents, that we're the only state in the nation in which the BOE isn't already administering this program. But it's worth pointing out that we're also the only state in the nation that has a BOE of elected officials, which means that rather than a fair and transparent process, there is the potential for well-funded lobbying to influence results at that level. For all these reasons and the aforementioned, we oppose this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, excuse me, Michael Raddick on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Santa Clara County, here in opposition for the reasons outlined by Assessor Stone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, right. Any further in the opposition? Any questions among the members? Supervisor Morlock.
I'm just curious, after hearing all the arguments, Mr. Church, is there a way that there could be a collaborative effort that you review the work done by the BOE before the filings are approved? Is there a function there that you could establish?
Well, certainly, we are a cooperative agency, and regardless what happens, we're going to do our best to make it happen. But the point is that there's a better way to structure the administration of this tax, and SB 661 is not the way.
So then how much are we spending in staff time to deal with how much in revenues, as the chairman had pointed out? Where's the cost benefit?
Should look at it.
In fact, the costs would actually increase. The State Board of Equalization is funded by the state, as you know. They would have to create a whole unit.
The question, I think, was if you just got rid of the tax.
Oh, if you just got rid of
What is the tax raise? Raise 75, 80 million bucks. What's it cost to collect? That's the question.
substantially less than that. I mean, I don't know the exact number. It's not.
Well, the producers, statewide, we're looking at about $8 billion in $8 billion in revenue, in valuations. So that
80 million.
Yeah, that equates to 80 million in revenue. Locally, in San Mateo County, it's about 1.7. For my staff person, about 1.7 billion, 1.8 billion, so we're about 18 million in revenue. So we all depend on this local revenue.
Anything further for the members? Thank you. Senator, do you want to close?
Well, I would just like to respond to a couple of comments from my favorite tax assessors in the state, and my tax assessor and my neighboring one, who are good friends and good people and tremendous assessors, and do their job very passionately. But the comment was made related to the tax breaks and special treatments after 9/11, and I know the formula was established, determined, and agreed to, and that same formula can be changed in the future. This bill doesn't deal with that, other than say who is going to be the decider of the tax and who is going to conduct be the taxing agency rather than the county. So it doesn't deal with that. That's a separate issue that will be followed. Also, my good friend Mr. Stone mentioned that, you know, the appeals board and the comments that were made by the Assessor's Appeals Board. I mean, here again, the assessor made the tax and the evaluation. The valuation was there. The tax was assessed. The appeals came. The appeals failed, obviously, and whatever comments were made, then the tax was the tax that was paid at the end of the day. So the system worked there just as it will work in this, using that same formula that played out well in Los Angeles, where I think the issue was discussed, will play out the same way with the Board of Equalization. The tax will be the same, the amount will be the same, the counties will be kept whole.
And also, I just think this argument that there hasn't been a bunch of appeals is an illusory argument. It doesn't, when you're in business, what's it going to cost me for all my staff time and all the accountants and all the lawyers, and what's at risk? And how much people do I get angry at me by challenging government so they'll zets me next time? And so, you just don't get these appeals. This argument that everybody's going to sue all the time just doesn't happen because people are so intimidated from the process, and you just say, whatever, the cost is more, and you pay the bill. And I don't think these arguments that is a proving point that the system is equitable or works because people don't bring litigation or bring appeals. Yes?
Assessor, I wish that was true.
Well, that's a different story on all the local property stuff, but on these big things where the cost is this and you got 380 pages, it's a different thing. Yes?
This has not been my area of expertise, so I appreciate the conversation, but I guess if this bill moves forward, I need to understand the implications on county-by-county levels, so I'm knowledgeable. I appreciate the fact that $8 billion worth of property assets translates to about $80 million. I don't know the implications locally, so if this bill moves forward, those are the kind of information I think all members are going to want to try to understand. And then even a broader context, whether this shift is something that would establish a precedent for many other businesses. And that cumulative impact in the shift, not that this doesn't have merit, but I think we should know the unintended or intended consequences of this action, and that's my concern.
Fair call. Fair observation.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think we can respond to Senator Palby's question about the precedent. Ledge Council confirmed in its opinion that the basis for the legislature's ability to move that jurisdiction came from the fact that airlines had been classified under California law as a utility. So other types of properties that are non-utilities not subject to the same thing. I do not believe this will be a problem from a precedential standpoint.
But it's a really good question. It's a really good question. It's really looking at the broader approach. Yeah, fair call. Anything further, Senator?
Yes, I vote, members. Thank you.
Yes, I vote. We got a motion. Moved due process to appropriations by Senator Hernandez. Secretary, call the roll.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Wynn. Bell.
Aye.
Bell, aye. Hernandez.
Aye.
Hernandez, aye. Laura. Morlock.
Aye.
Morlock, aye. Pavley. Pavley, aye. 5-0.
5-0. We'll hold the roll open. Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Walt, we see you in the audience. Thank you so much. Members, SB 762, is that your only bill up? Senator Walk, SB file item number 13, correct? 13. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, first I'd like to thank your extraordinary committee staff.
Extraordinary committee staff.
And chair.
Oh, I didn't
For
do
working
anything.
closely with my extraordinary staff.
Well, that's because you have prejudice here, because that used to be your staff.
That's right. Thank you for working on the bill. We accept the amendments suggested on page 4 and 5, comment 2, 3, 4, and 5. We accept the amendments in those areas. SB 762 would establish a pilot program for counties to utilize the best value when awarding construction contracts in excess of $1 million. A similar pilot program, which I authored in 2011, did the same for the University of California, and there has been a study, as there is in this current bill, to see what the results have been, and they've been positive. And change orders, for example, have been decreased, so that's a savings of money.
That's a good thing.
Very good thing. This will allow counties to select contractors on the basis of objective criteria, all of which has to be set out in advance, in addition to price. And in order to implement this best value method, the participating county must adopt and publish mandatory procedures and criteria that are consistent with the bill. This will ensure that bid selections are conducted fairly and impartially. All participating counties, as I said, if they choose to participate, have to present a report to the legislature by 2020, which is similar to the one that was put forward by the Office of the President for the university system when the provisions of this bill sunset in 2020. Specified information that really enables us to understand whether it's been a value, whether it's done a good job, whether it's been fair and effective and useful. in project delivery. I have with me Paul Yoder and Kenan Artici, the Deputy Director of General Services for Solano County, to testify in support of the bill and answer any questions. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chairman, other members, Paul Yoder, Shaw Yoder, Antwi, very briefly, Solano County has been a pioneer with design build and wants to pioneer best value amongst the counties. And with me today I have Mr. Kenan Artici. He's the former county architect in Solano County. He's Deputy Director of General Services in Solano County. I'll pass it over to him. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you today. We see this as an opportunity to improve the partnering and collaboration with the construction community while still protecting the public investment for the dollars expended, with focusing not just on low cost, but really best value. A simple example might be looking at the ability of a contractor to construct in an occupied facility, keep an facility operational 24/7, and consider those factors as a contract award is being made. I can honestly say that through our design build process, we've never had a protest as a result of the objective nature in which we've looked to procure best value through that legislation.
Very good. Thank you so much. Any further in support? Opposition?
Mr. Chairman, Dave Ackerman, representing the Associated General Contractors. We were pleased to ultimately support Senator Wolk's bill dealing with the university. We were the sponsor of her legislation last year that standardized design build, and this bill incorporates amendments which standardize this process with design build. We support alternative procurement methodologies for construction. It's been done in the private sector for years, and this conforms the private sector experience to government, and we think it's the right direction to go, and we urge your support.
Good. Any further support? Somebody else? Any opposition? Go ahead, please.
Thanks.
Just take Mr. Ackerman's seat up front.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Todd Blumstein for the Southern California Contractors Association. We are opposed to the bill, unfortunately. However, we would like to recognize all the work that Senator Wolk has done over the years in construction procurement. Although the bill is a pilot program, looking back over the last several decades when the first authorization of design build occurred for DGS, the East Side project, there's been a slow stream of expanded design build projects over the years. And we see this as, the first in several best value projects and authorizations coming through the legislature. First it was the state on design build, then cities, counties, transit districts, and school districts, and there's quite a few now. So we see this as the first one. Our opposition is primarily based on philosophy and the practical effect of best value. On the philosophical side, our issue is the subjectivity in weighing the award. One of the criteria is a financial condition. So a county could say, well, when we're going to look at this project, 90% of the award will be based on the financial condition, just to use as an example. Well, that's going to benefit larger contractors. That's going to benefit contractors that are vertically integrated, that perhaps own mining facilities or other facilities. And that hurts smaller contractors that are out there that are looking to just bid and construct the projects. So we really think that because of the subjectivity in weighing it, an agency could favor one contractor over another instead of looking at just the simple objective lowest responsible bid as is current law. The second issue, the practical problem, to be brief, you look at awards across the state for best value used in design build projects. One of them, the Purple Line in Los Angeles, an LA Metro job, was awarded to a contractor $190 million above the lowest responsible bidder. So that agency paid a premium in order to select the contractor. So for those reasons, both on the philosophy as well as the practical nature, we're opposed.
But isn't that what you're trying to do? I mean, the lowest responsible bidder law was my law, right? And this seems to be a smart step to go to the next deal, because what happens in this game is that somebody comes in, lowballs the bejeebies out of a number, they hit you, then the board who has to make the decision say, County Board of Supervisors has to make a decision. We have another supervisor over here. Has to make a decision. Publicly, you're put under the light, and then they hit you like crazy with change orders. Don't you want a responsible best practices approach, a best value approach, where the decision makers can really look at all these factors, and if it is a greater number, then they'll be held accountable, but what you avoid the low ball play.
I agree.
That's what happens all the time, and there's people who are experts at the change order. I know a bunch of them.
And that's why you authored the bill in your term in the Assembly.
Yeah, I know.
To require pre-qualification.
Right.
And that's a way that if agencies use the pre-qualification, the standard form that you developed and you authored, they would be able to
Why
weed
I
out
looked at
those.
this and thought this was a great next step of this very same thing. But why does that not do that? I don't get it.
Again, because of the subjective nature of awarding. The lowest responsible bidder is a hard number. That's an objective figure. The subjectiveness of this bid could lead to favoritism and to fraud. I mean, why not? Why not have an agency, and not to disparage any of the agencies here, but you could have a project completely designed and sent out as an RFP with the intention of having one contractor win the project, based upon some of the subjectiveness that's authorized in the bill. That's our concern. That's not good for taxpayers.
Any questions among the members? Sir, anybody? Oh, Senator Bell had a question, that's right.
I support the bill, but I wanted to say this, okay? I think there's a big hole in the work that we do with contracting when we come to best value, and that's that we need to beef up the ethical behavior element. If we're going to have the subjectivity, we must beef up the ethical behavior, and not only for the people reviewing the contracts, but the people offering the contracts. And there's been some bills before this committee in the past that dealt with that particular issue. I get nervous when I hear best value. I think it's the right thing to do. I think you can select somebody based on the quality of the work they do. More so balancing that versus their low bid. I think that's important to be able to do that with a contractor that has certain qualities that you want to have. But, however, I think that by having more subjectivity, you need to balance that with more beefed up ethical behavior parameters. And we don't have that now. I think maybe we can do some research. How many contractor prosecutions have there been on unethical behavior among contractors? There has been some in California. I think the committee ought to be aware of those when we review these kind of bills. There's nothing in the report here. It should be exposed so that we can understand that there's this side of the question that needs to be looked at fully. It seems to me that there are contractors that try to compete for business, and sometimes people are tempted to take what I call unethical shortcuts.
Of course.
And we have to prevent that. We need more legislation on that particular area. So this is kind of a broad problem with contracting for municipal school districts and so forth. The whole issue needs to be addressed, is what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to make that statement to Senator Wolk. I know she cares about this because we've had lots of talks about it.
Senator Morlock and Senator Pavley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you've vocalized my thoughts real well. It's been very frustrating as a supervisor to have lowest and most responsible bidder come walking in the door with all kinds of change orders, and the whole thing morphs into something different. I like this proposal. I'm a little concerned about the labor compliance component. Maybe, Senator Wolk, you could help me with that a little bit.
Yes, we have a labor compliance component. We felt from the beginning on all design build legislation that I've done with actually in a bipartisan way that it was important to have labor and the public entities working together on this kind of approach. And we have incorporated language that has been worked out in all the design build, and I have just continued it. It works well. Labor piece is a good thing to have, and it makes for better projects on time and efficiently provided. So yes, there are provisions in here that have been negotiated over time for not just this bill, but for many involving design build.
Is this like project labor agreement light? Is it a form of a project labor agreement that?
It's similar. We don't discount. There's been plenty of legislation surrounding project labor agreements. We don't require one. We require, this is an agreement about how to proceed in terms of bidding and things that should be included.
These are public projects that require
Yeah.
Davis-Bacon compliance anyway, so what's the difference?
I'm just trying to look.
Yeah, a fair call.
Yeah.
Fair question, I'm just trying to
Yeah,
get.
there's nothing different in this bill than we have had for design build for counties, for cities, and over time we have increased the numbers of applicable entities that can use this method as we study and go forward. So in that sense, we have been working with labor to make sure that, and with the cities and counties or school districts, to make sure that the process is a good one and ensures the public.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Senator Bell. There are times you just want to wring some necks. And so I like the creativity here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Senator Pavley.
Thanks, Senator Bell, for bringing that up, because it is all about the ethical ways and, giving out, awarding bids to people that have connections or something, but it isn't really the best interest of the public as whole. So I had carried a bill a couple of years ago on this particular subject on behalf of community colleges. And they wanted to look at a variety of other ways that benefit the bill. Like, for example, the durability of the product. I think it was regarding furniture and things like that. They were purchasing, length of it. If you always have just what is the lowest price, sometimes ongoing expenses weren't really looked at. Also, whether someone was local so that they could come by quickly for maintenance or whatever was needed. So they had a lot of thoughtful reasons why this works, but I think Senator Bell articulates very well that this could go awry. And it's all about the ethics and accountability of the staff as well as the elected officials who are awarding these projects.
Interesting. And the other thing I would add that I think which caught my eye from practical experience, and I don't know if you've experienced this in local government yourself, but what's happened is as we've had more of these big projects, the schools and all this big public work that's been going on, and as there was a downturn in the economy, more and more folks, contractors, have been going for government work. And the competition is so great that they spend so much money and so much time on bid protests. And if you don't have, there's a balance between the flexibility to avoid the ethical issues that has plagued government for time immemorial, on the other side, to not so tie people down that you've created such a, I've seen these things, these numbers, and what you fell out and what your basis was. And what happens is it become impossible to actually get something done. And there's extraordinary delays in trying to do public projects because once a governmental entity makes a decision, the people that lose then protest. I look at this as also giving some flexibility and some protection to government in this balance. I think as you suggest, all the members so far, except for Senator Hernandez, have suggested this ethical balance, which is critically important. I just want to add that into the discussion. Anything further? I ask for an aye vote. Very good. We have a motion on this. Move the bill by Senator Hernandez. And this is due pass to, we took amendments, right?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We, in fact, do have a conflict of interest provision and procedures in the bill,
Oh, good.
thanks to the staff. Okay. I
You
ask
took the amendments to do that, so it's to pass to as amended to appropriations. Secretary, call the roll.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Wynn. Bell. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Laura. Morlock. Pavley. Pavley, aye. You have 3-0.
What is it?
3-0.
3-0, we'll hold that roll open. Thank you very much,
Thank
Senator
you.
Walk. We got Senator Pan up with 3 measures. Before we do that, if I can quickly call a roll on get a motion on the consent calendar. So moved by Senator Pavley. Secretary, call the roll.
Hertzberg.
Aye.
Hertzberg, aye. Wynn. Bell. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Laura. Morlock.
Consent calendar. Yeah.
Okay. 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 Morlock.
Informed that the ceiling fan was a bit in 10 years after